You are traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century and challenging the status quo. You are now entering the paradigm shift. Well, welcome to another paradigm shift for July 15th, 2017. This is your host, The Rambler, Jeff Johnson. Welcome. Before we get started, I just want to make one quick programming note. Tomorrow night, the Renegade and Rambler show will not be aired live. We will be doing a best of it. Well, it'll just be running in the loop. My partner in crime is unavailable to the show this week and next week. So the next 2 weeks, there will not be a Renegade and Rambler show. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that right now. So now it's out of the way. So let's go ahead and get started. During this week, as I normally do while I'm driving to work, I listen to our local Christian radio station. And for the most part, I enjoy most everything they have on there. And this particular day, I really did. Something they talked about kind of struck my fancy, and I want to just kind of discuss it. I actually looked it up a little bit and did a little research on it because I wanted to make sure that it was true, number one, and they told the truth. And number two, just to make sure that I had all the pertinent facts, because I certainly couldn't remember everything they said. But what it was is they had a couple that wrote a book talking about the differences between men and women. Today, well, you know how it's going in our society. They're trying to destroy the differences between men and women. They're trying to make it so that there are no sexes, that there's no difference between anybody. We're all just as an X, or we're just a Z, or we're just a whatever you feel like being. As my partner in crime on Sunday night likes to say, he self-identifies as a Wookiee. So, more power to him, I guess. Why not? Doesn't matter. You can get a driver's license that says you're not a man or not a woman. So I guess whatever. But anyway, there's differences between men and women. And the one that really caught my attention, and I actually went and looked it up, looked up the study, and this comes from the University of Penn Medical Center, or Medical University. And what they were talking about was, as young men go into puberty, their body dumps a lot of testosterone. That testosterone breaks down the connections between our right brain and our left brain. So they're not talking back and forth anymore. Women, on the other hand, don't have that dump of testosterone, so those connections are still available to them. So their right and left brain are constantly talking back and forth. So some of the differences that they were talking about was, and quite honestly, I can see it every time I think about it now that I know this, it was really kind of cool. Women, the average woman, so that means if you're above average, it's more than this. If you're below average, it might be less than this. But the average woman can hear 7 different distinct sounds at the same time and listen to all 7 of them. Now, a man can only listen to one thing. So if he's watching TV, he isn't listening to you, ladies. So now you understand the differences in our brains. This is great stuff. It's cool. So you got all men have their brains separated, the right and left, so they can only listen to one thing at a time. So if they're watching TV, they're not listening to you. Women, on the other hand, can hear the TV, the radio, the husband in the garage while he's working. She can hear him. She can hear the kids, one of the kids up in the bedroom. They can hear the other kid out in the kitchen. They can hear the neighbor playing the radio. They can listen to all this all at one time, and they can hear, and they're cataloging everything they hear as they're hearing it. A guy hears the TV. She's talking in the background. He isn't hearing you. So if he turns off the TV, he's actually listening to you. So I found this out that's true, because I really can only listen to one thing at a time. If there's something else going on, it's either going to distract me and I'm not going to hear this anymore, or I'm going to have to really concentrate over here and listen to who I'm listening to. But that wasn't the cool thing. The cool thing was they did a study, and they had a group of men and a group of women. So they were doing CT of the brain, and the researchers told the women, while they're doing the CT, they put the dye in, and they told them, think about nothing. So they put them in the CT, and the brain's going back and forth. It's shooting all over the place. I mean, it's just all kinds of activity. And then if you go to that study site, you can actually look at the scans, and you can see all this activity. All the women, they could not think of nothing. They put the men in there, told them to think of nothing, put them in, and the researcher said to the tech that was running the CAT scan, you can start the monitor now. He goes, I did. Men, there was no activity. They were told to think of nothing, and they thought of nothing. So what they discovered is men have a nothing box. So now they know this, it's really kind of funny because someone said to me the other day, I was wondering what you were thinking about. You were staring off, and I felt like saying, well, I was in my nothing box. They found that men have a nothing box. So you can actually sit there and think about nothing. So next time your husband, your boyfriend, or whatever says, I was thinking about nothing, he's not lying to you. He's not mocking you. He's not any of that. He's telling you the truth. Way cool. I thought that was really fun. And I thought, for a change, why don't I start with something fun? Because, heck, we're always talking about all the bad things in this world. And it was kind of a neat little bit of useless knowledge now that you can store away and just think about nothing at all. Because we can. Us men can. So, and ladies, sorry, but you're not going to think of nothing because you're going to have all these things going on. And the thing is, that was the other thing about the women's boxes. Women can open up, they can have multiple boxes open and they can think about a whole bunch of things. Men can only open one box at a time. So if we're discussing something, is this box, we open this box, we discuss this. You try to open up 5 other boxes and we're lost. No. We're talking about this here. This one box is open. That's it. And then amongst all those boxes, we have the nothing box. So we really, truly can think of nothing. And just, I'll read this little bit of this article. Matter of fact, I think it's not very long. I might even read the whole. I'll read the whole thing. Women are much more complicated than men. This is from McClure's magazine. How men and women think differently. The nothing box. So I actually found another article unrelated to the book that they were talking about on the radio station. First, I want to start with men. Men's brains are very unique. Most women don't realize that whether we're having relations with a female, or watching sports, our brains are made up of little boxes. We got a box for everything. We've got a box for the car. We've got a box for the money. We got a box for the job. We've got a box for you. We got a box for the kids. We got a box for your mother, somewhere in the basement. Little humor there. We've got boxes everywhere. And the rule is the boxes don't touch. When a man discusses a particular subject, we go to that particular box, we pull that box out, and we open the box. And we discuss only what is in that box. So that's what I was just talking about a minute ago. And when we close the box and put it away very, very carefully, not to touch other boxes. And when we put it away, we put it away to make sure it doesn't touch any other boxes. Now, women's brains are very different from men's brains. Women's brains are made up of a big ball of wire. And everything is connected to everything. The money is connected to the car is connected to your job, and your kids are connected to your mother, and everything is all connected. It's like the internet, superhighway, and it's all driven by energy that we call emotion. And one of the reasons why women tend to remember everything, because if you take an event, you connect it to an emotion, it burns in your memory, and you can remember it forever. The same thing happens for men. It just doesn't happen very often because, quite frankly, we don't care. Women tend to care about everything. Now, men, we have a box in our brain that most women are not aware of. This particular box has nothing in it. In fact, we call it the nothing box. And all of the boxes a man has in his brain, the nothing box is our favorite box. If a man has a chance, he'll go to his nothing box every time. That's why a man can do something seemingly completely brain dead for hours on end, like fishing. Now, they've actually measured this. The University of Pennsylvania a couple years ago this is the study I was talking about, did a study and discovered that men have the ability to think about absolutely nothing and still breathe. Women can't do it. Their mind has never stopped, and they don't understand the nothing box. And it drives them crazy because nothing drives a woman more crazy and makes them feel more irritated than to watch a man doing nothing. So it was just kind of a fun thing to start off with, the nothing box. And like I said, just this morning, I was in my nothing box. And they're right. Men love to go to the nothing box. It's a relaxing time when we can just not think of anything and enjoy nothing. So that's it for that. I was going to go to this, but I don't have time to do that before the break. So let's start somewhere else. What else can I do? Well, let's go here. All right. Last week I talked about gun violence and the fact that this supposed conservative magazine said that gun violence is epidemic in here. The 50 most, this is Daily Mail from the UK, 50 most violent cities in the world are revealed, with 21 of them in Brazil. Let's see, 41 of the 50 are in Latin America. So 50 most violent, 41 of the 50 are in Latin America. 9 are in the United States. Can you guess which ones they are? I think I listed them all last week. Let's see. U.S. cities, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, New Orleans are also named. I think New Orleans is like number 4 most violent city in the United States. The 50 most dangerous cities in the world have been named and shamed, and astonishingly, 21 of them are in Brazil. Latin America features highly in the ranking released by Mexico's Citizens Council for Public Security and Criminal Justice, as it is home to some 41 of the cities listed. Drug trafficking, gang wars, political instability, corruption, poverty are to blame for the high homicide rate in the region, which is just 8% of the world's population, according to UN data. So it's a very small area, small population, and they are very much the most violent in the world. Doesn't just include Latin America, with U.S. cities, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, New Orleans also featured. I said that already. Venezuela's capital city, Caracas, has taken the top spot for the ranking, which is based on the number of homicides per 100,000 inhabitants of the city in 2015. Again, I think the stuff I had cited last week was from 2015. Let's go down here. Let me just. Caracas is number 1. Took number 1 from San Pedro Sula in Honduras, which had been in first place for the past 4 years. Venezuela's increasingly volatile political and economic situation is blamed for the spike in violent crime. The notoriously dangerous city of San Pedro Sula dropped to second place after slashing its homicide rate from 171.2 to 111.03 per 100,000. When we're talking about in the U.S. having a homicide rate of about of less than probably about 12 per 100,000. And that conservative magazine had the gall to say that we're in an epidemic of violence, that we're just out of control, violent people. So that means that Caracas is somewhere in the 170s. I think I saw later in the article they're in the 170s, about 180 per 100,000. That's 180 homicides per 100,000 people. And when you're talking some of these with 600, 700,000 people, there's a lot of homicides. So anyway, let's see. This is the Renegade Ramblers Radio Network, 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. I think we'll go ahead and take our first break, and we'll be back right after that.
Congressman Paul, are these two men in the middle insufficiently conservative for you?
Well, I think that the problem is nobody's to define what being conservative means. And I think that is our problem. Conservatives means we have smaller government and more liberty. And yet, if you ask what have we done, I think we've lost our way completely. Our rhetoric is still pretty good. But when we get in charge, we expand the government. You talk about Dodd-Frank, but we gave Sarbanes-Oxley. We gave debts as well, you know, when we're in charge. So if it means limited government, you have to ask a basic question: what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, had a revolution, wrote a constitution. And they said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty. It's not to run a welfare state and not to be the policeman of the world. And so if you're going conservative, how can you be conservative and cut food stamps, but you won't cut spending overseas? There's not a nickel or penny that anybody will cut on the conservative side overseas spending, and we don't have the money. They're willing to start more wars. So I say if you're conservative, you want small government across the board, especially in personal liberty. What's wrong with having the government out of our personal lives? So this is what we have to decide: what conservative means, what limited government means. And I have a simple suggestion. We have a pretty good guide, and if we follow the Constitution, government would be very small, and we would all be devoted conservatives.
Looking for a new custom camo dress or scarf? Tail Gunner Apparel. Looking for bath and body products for women and men? Tail Gunner Apparel. Looking for bed scarves and custom home products? Tail Gunner Apparel. Look awesome and feel even better. Tail Gunner Apparel on Facebook or at tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com. That's tailgunnerapparel.etsy.com.
Made love and then you cried. Remember when? Cruising down the highway, a Corvette Stingray. I do it my way, got a good job. I'm making lots of money. I look good and I'm funny, so I might want some honey. The gypsy said the problem with you needs some sensible shoes.
Well, welcome back to the Renegade, Ramblers Radio Network, and this is the Paradigm Shift, and I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. So before the break, we finished up on that story about the guns. We talked about the men and our nothing box. I hope you heard that. If you didn't, please listen to the replay, because that was a very fun segment to do. I enjoyed it very much. And it was fun. It wasn't about politics. It was just a nice, fun segment. So now that we're back from break, I want to play a media file from Mark Stein.
Joining us, author Mark Stein. We have a
computer
whole
started
lot
this
to go
on.
at with our Mark. So first of all, there's this one for you. The Democrats, all about obstruction, and it is so far a winning tactic. They have obstructed everything. What say you?
Yeah, that's true. I also think there is obstruction, or at any rate, indifference to the president's agenda from a lot of people in the Republican leadership. And that's the real problem here in political terms. But when your party nominally controls the House, the Senate, and the White House, there's a limit to how you can blame it all on the Democrats. In the end, Ryan McConnell, the Congress, has to get on board with the president's program. There's no alternative. And if they don't actually want to advance it against Democrat obstructionism, they will be punished for that next year.
All right. So, yeah, that's the article, name of the article, and the piece is from Fox News. Mark Stein, Republicans will face wrath of voters in 2018 if they don't get behind Trump. Even if they get behind Trump, not much is going to change. That's the whole problem. We have been chronicling here for since we started last, well, I guess it was December. Yeah, I guess it was about December. It's almost coming up on a year that we've been doing these shows. And we've been pretty much chronicling how, whether it's the Republicans in power or whether it's the Democrats in power, nothing much really changes. And as an old friend of mine who I've kind of disconnected with again on Facebook, he posted something about the Republicans and Democrats. And on there, I went back to my old standby when I described Republicans and Democrats. The problem is people keep thinking that there's a difference, that there's two parties. And as I said in my post on there, in essence, there probably is two parties. There's them, the ruling elite, and then there's us, the serfs, the slaves, the ones they steal from. So there are two parties. It's them and us. But when you talk about the two-party system, you're talking about the Republicans, Democrats. Well, in reality, there is no difference. They're two sides, and here's my normal way I always describe them, is they're two sides of the same coin, same cultural Marxist coin, because they're both advancing their cultural Marxist ideas. One uses it through the social welfare, and one does it through corporate and military industrial complex welfare. And we'll discuss a little bit more different area, even in the health insurance area, where now that's part of the whole corporate welfare. And see, when you look at that, there's two sides of the coin on that. On the Democrat side, you got the social welfare part of this. They want Obamacare for social welfare. On the other side, you got the cultural Marxists, the Republicans. They want it because they want to bail out their corporate buddies and give them the money, make them rich. See how it works? There's not two sides there. It's them. It's them against us. Them taken from us. So when he says that the Republicans are going to pay a price, they very well may. But does it change anything? No. It's still the same thing. You got two sides of the same coin. So the Democrats are in for a while. Now what's going to change? Nothing. They're going to do the same thing they're doing now. They're going to keep stealing from us. They're going to find new and more improved ways to steal from us. And it's not going to change anything. So it's just, That's why we call this the paradigm shift, because we got to shift away from this whole idea that all we got to do is get more red in there. Like I said the other night, we were told we need to get more congressmen. If we take back the House, we can do this. Okay, didn't do anything. If we only take back the Senate, then we have the Senate and the House. Then we'll do it. Okay, so what did they do? Okay, they voted a bunch of times while King Obama was in to repeal Obamacare, knowing full well that he was going to veto it. So it was just political theater to make the masses feel like the Republicans are doing something for them. Red meat to the masses. So they said, well, all we need is the president. If we get the president, then we can get the Supreme Court. If we get the Supreme Court, we can fix it all. If we get the president, we can do it all. So what do? Trump wins. Let me continue the media file, and from there, that's where it's going to take us into the next part of this.
But Mark, all we heard throughout the election campaign and for the last few years, all we heard was Republicans will cut taxes to get the country moving, and Republicans will repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, are we to believe that Republicans don't actually want to do either of those two things? I can't believe that.
Well, Mitch McConnell is standing there saying, if he can't work with Republicans, he'll work with Democrats on Obamacare reform. What do you think that's going to look like? What do you think that's going to do for premiums? What do you think that's going to do for deductibles? In the end, you can't operate a three-party system in this country. Trump is a Republican president, and he's entitled to the support of the Republican Congress.
I think something will be done at the very last minute because they have to do something.
So, before I get back into that, the problem is that they've been doing something. They've been doing something for the last 200 years. They've been legislating for the last 200 years. And where has it gotten us? Certainly not in a better place. More laws has not made us more free, not made us more wealthy. And contrary to that, I believe that all this regulation and laws, and a lot of it isn't even laws, again, it's regulations, bureaucrats deciding how they're going to rule us. So for the last 200 years, all these regulations, laws, edicts from our elected king has not made us safer, not made us freer, and certainly isn't making us richer today when you consider that probably over half of your income is consumed by government at all levels. And it's probably pushing 60%. And I'm trying to remember the number, but it seems to me once I read in my history book that serfs in Old England paid on average about 30% to the Lord. 30%. We're way beyond that. Slaves paid over 50%. And so we're into that slave realm. We're not being served by this government. This system of government was doomed to failure because it has no ability to have a negative on bad behavior on its part. Unlike the Articles were very good. And again, I've talked to numerous people about this in the past. Going back to the Articles of Confederation would probably be a great benefit to us as far as liberty and constraining this out-of-control monster that's in Washington, D.C. So anyway, why they're going to agree to do something, and my opinion is undo everything and just let it go. Leave us alone. We will do just fine if you leave us alone. But I believe Mr. Varney is correct. I believe they'll come to an agreement. They'll do something, and we will be left holding the bag and paying the cost. Because, again, it's all about the bailouts to the corporations. And on the other side of the cultural Marxist coin, it's all about the bailouts to the welfare recipient. So anyway, this is from, I believe it was Rare. I don't see it right now. All right. Exclusive. Senator Rand Paul, Senate GOP decides to keep Obamacare. I miss the old days when Republicans stood for repealing Obamacare. Republicans across the country and every member of my caucus campaigned to repeal, often declaring they would tear out Obamacare root and branch. And, I mean, just think, it was just a very few short months ago. It was campaign season last summer. And what did you hear? Constantly, we're going to repeal it. We're going to repeal it. And they add on this replace the thing, which, you know, if they just repealed it, we don't need to replace, just get out of it. But anyway, that he's right. It was a constant cry that they were going to do something about repealing Obamacare. And did they? No. So anyway, he misses the old day of the root. They're going to tear out Obamacare root and branch. Now too many Republicans are falling all over themselves to stuff hundreds of billions of taxpayer, the word I hate. I hate that word taxpayer, because they let you know that you are just a resource. You are a tax slave. You're not a citizen. You're a taxpayer. You're the slave that provides them money. You go to work every day to provide them the resources they need. You don't go to work to take care of yourself and your family, though roundaboutly you do. But you're there to be a taxpayer, to provide them what they require of you, what they extort from you, what they steal from you on all levels. So, came across the word I hate. Don't call yourself a taxpayer. You're not a taxpayer. You're a citizen. And as soon as you start acting like a citizen and exerting your authority over government because you are the sovereign, they're not, they work for you, then we might actually change something. But as long as everyone's still calling themselves a taxpayer, we're doomed. All right, hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars into a bill that doesn't repeal Obamacare and feeds big insurance a huge bailout. They're going to get a bailout, aren't they? Yeah, that old bit that I play now and again. Obamacare regulations, still there. Taxes, not many, still there. Totaling hundreds of billions of dollars. So they're going to steal massive amounts of wealth from us. In spite of claiming they're going to repeal it, they're going to keep it, and they're going to keep stealing more from us. Insurance company bailouts, those two. Remember when Republicans complained about Obamacare's risk corridors? Remember when we called the corridors nothing more than an insurance company bailout? I remember when one prominent GOP candidate during a presidential debate explicitly called out the Obamacare risk corridors as a bailout to insurance companies. Does anyone else? Now the Senate GOP plan being put forward is chock full of insurance bailout money to the tune of nearly $200 billion. Republicans, present companies excluded, that would be Rand Paul, now support the idea of lowering your insurance premiums by giving a subsidy to the insurance company. See what I'm talking about earlier? We'll come back to this after the break. I might be able to read one more sentence on it, but remember what I said earlier about two sides of the same coin? The Republicans, they're going to give a subsidy to the insurance companies. They're going to make sure they get they can share in a $200 billion windfall that they stole from us. or they're stealing from your children because they don't have the money. We don't have the money, so they're just going to print it, or they're going to borrow it and put it off on our children and grandchildren. Two sides of the same coin. So now we got the money being given to the insurance companies. In Obamacare, under the Democrats, they're giving subsidies to the poor. So they're giving the welfare to them. They're still stealing it from us. It's not their money. They don't have anything other than what they print or steal. It's the same coin, people. It's that cultural Marxism. They're all Marxists. They're all taking our money. They're all stealing from us, but they're just giving it to different people. Flip the coin. It doesn't matter. So let's just keep electing them. How idiotic are we? Well, I don't have time to continue reading. This is the Renegade Ramblers Radio Network. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. And we'll come right back from this break.
You're as cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love. You never take advice. Someday you'll pay the price. I know. I've seen it before. It happens all the time. You're closing the door, you leave the world.
Citizens, soldiers, I'm here at the order of General Robert E. Lee, commanding all Virginia forces. On April 15th of this year of our Lord, 1861, Simon Cameron, the Secretary of War of the United States, sent a telegram to our Governor, John Letcher, directing him to raise 3 regiments of infantry to be sent to assist in suppressing the Southern Confederacy. Governor Letcher's answer is well known to you, but perhaps not his words. His wire to Washington stated, "You have chosen to inaugurate civil war. And having done so, we will meet you in a spirit as determined as the Lincoln administration has exhibited toward the South." 2 days later, the Virginia legislature voted for secession. Just as we would not send any of our soldiers to march in other states and tyrannize other people, so will we never allow the armies of others to march into our state and tyrannize our people. Like many of you, indeed most of you, I've always been a Union man. It is not with joy or with a light heart that many of us have welcomed secession. Had our neighbors to the north practiced a less bellicose form of persuasion, perhaps this day might not have come, but that day has been thrust upon us, like it was thrust upon our ancestors. The Lincoln administration required us to raise 3 regiments. Tell them we have done so.
Renegade Ramblers Radio Network. 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers.
Are you out of touch? I guess I never noticed that much. Uranium lover, I'm live on your wire. Oh, come and take me, whoever you are. She's a lot like you, the dangerous type. She's a lot like you.
Well, welcome back to Renegade Ramblers Radio Network. And this is the paradigm shift. And before the break, we were talking about these non-repeal of Obamacare, repeal, I don't know, you can't even keep up with it anymore. let me just go ahead and continue on with what Ryan Paul says. And that'll make it much more clear, I think. So before the break, we were talking about the two sides of the one coin. The Republicans giving the subsidies to the corporations, the insurance companies to $200 billion. And on the other side, you have the Democrats that want to give the bailout money, the money to the welfare recipients of this republic. No matter which way you do it, they have to steal the money from us, from the citizen, or they have to print it or borrow it. Either way, it's money that we're on the hook for. And so that pretty much resets where we were before the break. Okay, so remarkable if the GOP now supports an insurance stabilization fund to lower insurance prices, maybe they now support a new car stabilization fund to lower the price of cars. Or maybe the GOP will support an iPhone stabilization fund to lower the price of iPhones. The possibilities are limitless once you accept that the federal government should subsidize prices. I remember when Republicans favored the free choice of the marketplace. So, as I said earlier about Marxism and the cultural Marxists, and they're both the same on either side of the coin. If you think about it, we are in a pretty well charted waters of the Soviet socialist states of Russia. Remember, they had all this. They had price subsidies. They had all this stuff that we're trying now. It all failed there, but we're going to do it here now. So, is this really where we want to be? Think back to the break. What did I play? That speech from Gods and Generals about secession. Do we want to live in the Soviet socialist states of the United States? Do we want to be part of this command and control central government in Washington, D.C.? Because we certainly aren't free. We aren't free. Tell you what. Can you live in your house without paying them the extortion fee? What will happen? Men with guns will come and take you forcefully from that house. So are you free? Can you really freely live in your house? Can you drive a car? Can you travel around unimpeded? If you don't have a license, they're going to haul you off to jail. Not very free. Can you go hunting? Can you go hunting without going to the Crown? No. They'll take you off to jail. They'll write you a ticket. They'll steal more money from you if you don't get a license from them to go hunting or fishing. We're not free. They control every aspect of our lives. Go ahead and try to build a house. Try to build a deck on your house without going and getting permission. We live in a top-down control socialist, Soviet socialist style government. This is not freedom. Our founding fathers be rolling over in their graves at what we live under. Think about it. The Tea Party happened over, it's hard to find an exact number, but approximately a 3% tax on tea. Approximately. What did I say before? We're paying 50 to 60% of our total income to government at all levels now. You think Jefferson and Henry and all the rest of them would be sitting around paying these exorbitant taxes and being happy about it, being controlled from the top down, being controlled out of Washington, D.C., told when they can build a pond, they can't do anything in their stream on their property. The list is endless, folks. I can't even try to think of something, anything that they don't control. The Senate Obamacare bill does not repeal Obamacare. I want to repeat that so everyone realizes why I say I'll vote no as it stands now. The Senate Obamacare bill does not repeal Obamacare, not even close. So you have the Republicans, you have the Democrats, the one party. They're not going to change anything. Is Stein right? The Republicans probably will pay a price in November if they don't repeal Obamacare. But they're not going to. They can't. It's not in their nature. Once they take a power from the people, they don't give it back. So what does that leave us to do? It leaves us to act as citizens and say no. Practice a little bit of either nullification and interposition. And one of these days, I'm going to have to either have Suzanne and Mark on, and we're going to talk. I think I'm going to get either on my show or we're going to do a show on Sunday night after our show, and we're going to talk about nullification in a position, because if we're not going to secede, then that's all that's left to the states. We have to interpose and we have to nullify. And I believe Mark is in the process of doing that in Oklahoma over the abortion issue. The other thing in that thing they were talking about was income taxes. It's the time, okay, 9 minutes. A couple different things related to that. Okay, in Seattle and a number of places, government's getting involved in wages. Again, here it is, it's this top-down thing. Government controlling every aspect. They're fixing the cost of labor. They're fixing they can't fix the cost of labor. By fixing the cost of labor at an artificially inflated price, well, let me read this. Applebee's franchise owner euthanizes minimum wage argument. Applebee's franchise owner in New York, Zane Tankel, explains, no, euthanizes the minimum wage argument on Varney and Company. A minimum wage is one thing, but Democrats seem to have such a minimal understanding of economics that they think the government can make the minimum wage into a living wage. Simple economics. Government raises the minimum wage in accordance with ideology means employers have to fire people to make a profit. Why is this so hard to understand? Another point in fact is that these low-level jobs require nothing in the way of skills and aren't worth more money. These jobs can be replaced by automation. We see it already. We're going to start seeing, we don't have them yet in this area, but we're going to start seeing, especially since I live on the New York border, live in Pennsylvania, just 7 miles from New York, work in New York, we're going to start seeing kiosks in a lot of the, if not all, of the fast food stores in New York State, because they can't pay to have people there doing this. They can run a minimal staff to make sure they get the food out. That's the only way they're going to maximize profits. So, last November, in Maine, workers asked for a minimum wage to be lowered. Last November, the Maine state legislature voted to raise minimum wages for restaurant servers. Then in mid-June, they voted to lower it back down. They did it because the Maine restaurant workers, the politicians thought they were helping, lobbied for a lower minimum wage. They said they don't want to be saved. See, that's the whole thing. Politicians think that we need saving. These people understood that they weren't going to make out well with an increased minimum wage. And this article doesn't talk about this Applebee's franchise owner. Applebee's in New York is going to fire 1,000 workers this year because of this increased minimum wage. So that's 1,000 people that are now out of work because politicians thought they needed to do something to help these people. These are jobs that are not skilled, and they're just entry-level jobs. I just said in the article, don't need any experience. They're no experience jobs. I'll just let that one go. Seattle City Council approves income tax on the rich, but quick legal challenge likely. They're going to raise an income tax in just the city of Seattle on people making over $250,000 single. $500,000 is a couple. If I can find the paragraph, I'll read one paragraph from this. This is in spite of, I'm not going to find it. I'm not going to have time to go searching for it. This is in spite of the fact that the Constitution of Washington does not allow for an income tax. Neither Washington or any city in the state now collects an income tax. That's partly why the state's tax system has been called the most regressive. Okay, that was the article in that article stating that the state or none of the cities collect an income tax because it's not allowed. But they're going to go against the Constitution as it stands in Washington. And we're going to talk about that another day, too. I got to put that in my memory bank to talk about constitutions. So why does Washington State have a constitution if, as the incorporationists think, the 14th Amendment applies the Constitution of the United States to every state? There's no need for a constitution. All right. We're going to come back to that and talk about that in another show. So they're going to go against their state constitution and pass an income tax anyway. And the last thing I'm just going to have about 2 minutes to talk about. This is from USA Carry. The title is called "Never Give a Warning Shot" or "Fire Warning Shots, Just Shoot the Threat." We often talk about prepping items here, and what this is actually talking about a legal issue. In many states, if you fire a warning shot, you actually can be prosecuted because you have the ability to shoot a warning shot, the threat is not an imminent threat of life or death danger. That's how the law looks at it. If the threat is sufficient that you have to draw your firearm, it really comes to a shoot or no shoot. In the eyes of the law, you've already basically discharged the firearm by drawing the firearm. So you don't want to just shoot because you drew the firearm, obviously. But if the threat is sufficient that you have to draw the firearm, if you're going to pull the trigger, you shoot the threat, stop the threat. This warning shot, it's a legal issue. You're going to end up going to jail for shooting a warning shot. If the threat is not sufficient, don't shoot the warning shot. Don't pull the weapon if it's not that threatening of a situation. I mean, this is all common sense, folks. I'm a concealed carrier. I'm also in law enforcement. I have a firearm pretty much 24 hours a day. And the fact of the matter is, if you're drawing a firearm, it's because the threat is dire. And so you better train and you better know when to use your firearm. So enough with the Prepper Corner. I only had a couple minutes. I really didn't have enough time to give that subject everything it deserves because it really is a big subject. If you're going to carry firearms, you have a great responsibility. It's not one to take lightly. And number one, train. I train often. Matter of fact, I'm planning on going to the range this week. And I'm taking some guys and I train them. We do a lot of drills, drawing drills. We do I work with these guys because if it comes down to it, I want them to be competent, and I want them to be able to shoot properly, safely, identify their target. We play games with that. If you ever see it, oh my gosh. Where does the hour go? I don't have time to go into it. Well, that's the paradigm shift for this week. I'm totally out of time. I should have started that earlier, because now we got to talk about guns and shooting, and that's that box next to the nothing box that I talked about in the first segment. Us guys have. And listen next week to the Paradigm Shift on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Monday morning, 9 a.m., that's right, a morning show, we have our very own Cowgirl Esquire, Suzanne Sherman with the Wasatch Report. So listen on Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, and listen to the Wasatch Report. Folks, it's been a lot of fun, and it was fun. I had a good time in the first segment, just talking about something light and funny. Have a good weekend. Go to church, worship your Lord, and I'll see you next week.